Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International.
And I'm CJ Hero. Welcome to the program. On tonight's headlines.
7 protesters were shot dead in Myanmar as the junta reacted to international condemnation of its crackdown by claiming ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi had accepted hefty illegal payments.
Japan's Emperor Naruhito attends a ceremony at Tokyo's National Theater to mark 10 years since the worst natural disaster in the country's living memory, a powerful earthquake, deadly tsunami, and nuclear meltdown that traumatized a nation.
Danish health authorities said they were temporarily suspending the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine after some patients developed blood clots since receiving the jab.
And on a small island surrounded by hundreds of wooden huts on stilts in the middle of Lake Nuku in southeast Benin, a giant painting shape.
And we're still following the developments in Myanmar. 7 protesters were shot dead today as the junta reacted to international condemnation of its crackdown by claiming ousted civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi had accepted hefty illegal payments. The military, which has defended its takeover by citing voting irregularities in November elections won by Suu Kyi's party, held a rare news conference on Thursday accusing Suu Kyi of corruption. In the capital, Naypyidaw, junta spokesman Zhao Mintun said the detained chief minister of Yangon had admitted giving Suu Kyi $600,000 in cash, along with more than 11 kilograms of gold. The United Nations on Wednesday condemned the junta's increasingly violent crackdown, which has seen more than 60 killed, 2,000 arrested, with even China, a traditional Myanmar ally, calling for de-escalation and dialogue. It was the second time in just over a month that the Council's 15 members, including China...
That was not a perfect one. I mean, we did not live in a perfect democracy in Myanmar. It was still heavily under military control in many aspects, which makes this coup even more difficult to understand. I mean, especially the accusations of electoral fraud by those that were largely in control of the country. But with all its, especially in control of the country, but with all its imperfections, I believe that it is important to go back to where we were before the coup.
In a related news, the United States announced sanctions Wednesday against 2 adult children of Myanmar junta leader Min Aung Hlaing over the... In a related news, the United States 2 adult children Min Aung Hlaing over the military coup and subsequent violence against protesters in the Southeast Asian nation. The junta leader's children, Aung Pyai Sone and Kin Theritatren, Aung Pyai Sone and Kin Theritatmon, have a variety of business holdings which have directly benefited from their father's position and malign influence. The statement, result of the sanctions, any assets they may have in the United and malign influence, the statement said. As a result of the sanctions, any assets they may have in the United States will be frozen. The United States has already imposed sanctions on top figures, including Min Aung Hlaing, the military chief, and new rulers of the junta. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, in a statement, said, quote, Burmese security forces, at the behest of military leaders, have brutally and lethally attacked unarmed protesters in these horrific attacks. He added that the latest sanctions were to promote accountability for those responsible for the coup and to target those who benefit financially from their connections to the military regime.
Meanwhile, Japan's Emperor Naruhito attended a ceremony at Tokyo's National Theater to mark 10 years since the worst natural disaster in the country's living memory, a powerful earthquake, deadly tsunami, and nuclear meltdown that traumatized a nation. Meanwhile, Prime Minister Yoshihide Suga told the memorial ceremony that the loss of life was still impossible to contemplate. Let's listen in.
この震災の被害の大きさは忘れることのできない記憶として今なお脳裏から離れることはありません。あれから10年、数多くの被災者が想像を絶する大きな被害を受けながらも共に助け合いながら幾多の困難を乗り越えてきました。高齢者や子どもたちを含め被災された方々の心の傷を癒し、心身の健康を見守っていくことも大切であると感じます。
我が国は幾度となく国難といえるような災害に見舞われてきましたが、その度に勇気と希望を持って乗り越えてまいりました。今を生きる私たちも先人たちに倣い、手を携えて前を向いて歩んでまいります。
Meanwhile, today marks a year since the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, the most powerful ever recorded in Japan. It affected all Japanese, including UN staff. Let's listen to their recollections.
I was chatting with my staff. There are around 30 people in the office. All of a sudden, bang, there was a big earthquake.
I remember holding a mug cup of a tea because I didn't know if I should hold it down or keep holding it because the ground was shaking so much.
I immediately asked my staff to go under the table to protect themselves.
I felt really powerless because I was out of the country.
It is not over. It will never be over. What's really important for us is not to forget.
It is very difficult to keep the same level of attention. Having said that, there's an international momentum, the Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction.
A lot of the NGOs, medical experts, and local governments have been building more networks. And since 2011, those new approaches have been implemented, but also been reviewed again and revised to make it better.
Thank you very much for the people who have survived this experience and live to tell your experience. Your experience.
Meanwhile, a 5.7 magnitude earthquake struck off Zambales today. The Philippine Institute of Volcanology and Seismology said the quake hit at 3:20, had its epicenter 60 kilometers southwest of Santa Cruz. It also had a depth of 16 kilometers, no damage 4 in the afternoon. It also had a depth of 16 kilometers. No damage. Shocks were.
The COVID-19 pandemic has not impacted efforts to safeguard natural ecosystems and habitats around the globe, says Adrian Phillips of the International Union for Conservation of Nature. Let's listen in.
I think the most obvious concern that comes from all of this is that we're putting a huge amount of money into fighting the virus and maintaining and restoring the economy afterwards, but the amount of the resources going into nature conservation is still pretty pitiful. And the amount of effort that's gone into developing a vaccine, which is a real triumph for vaccines, real triumph for humanity, I think, is not being matched by the comparable effort we need to put into looking after nature and natural resources around the planet. And if we don't get that, having a further pandemic, possibly with a virus that is not so easily controlled by a vaccine. There's not actually been a huge increase in the kind of high-profile poaching that people like to talk about, the killing of rhinos, for example. And the reason for that probably is a combination of the collapse in international travel. So, if you kill a poor rhino and you try and export its horn, there is to take you to the markets in the Far East. So, horn, there are no airlines. And so there's been a lot of loss of jobs, a loss of income, and many poor communities which have previously depended upon tourists have found themselves unable to survive without doing some poaching to find food to put into their larder.
The International Union for Conservation of Nature said the pandemic and its economic fallout have put rangers out of work, forced cuts to anti-poaching patrols, and sparked a range of environmental rollback. A special edition of the IUCN's Parks Journal, containing a collection of new research papers on the pandemic's various impacts on nature conservation, indicated the crisis was being felt in protected areas worldwide. A survey of rangers in more than 60 countries found that more than a quarter of them had seen their salaries reduced or delayed, while 1 in 5 had lost their
rains touched flooding and put dams at risk. Surging waters has roared through the streets and across neighborhoods. Officials have ordered thousands of people to evacuate at a community north of Honolulu. While there have been no reports of deaths or injuries, NBC News, citing officials, said that severe flash flooding has damaged or destroyed homes, closed many public roads, and led to evacuation orders for fear of fast rising waters and landslides. East Maui residents say they haven't seen rains like Monday's downpours in years. The emergency declaration gives the governor the authority to spend state funds as appropriated to protect the health, safety, and the welfare of residents and visitors in the state. Meanwhile, current forecasts estimate the rains to continue through Friday, March 12.
Meanwhile, unusual seismic activity in a volcanic zone near Iceland's capital, Reykjavik, that has been dormant for almost 800 years, has left experts stumped and searching for clues as to whether an eruption is imminent. The eerie cone of Mount Keilir rises up over the lunar-like landscape just 25 kilometers from Reykjavik, looming over the area now being closely monitored by volcanologists for the first signs of an eruption. Iceland has been on high alert since last week after a series of small earthquakes and tremor pulses related to increased magma flow in the Krisuvik volcanic system, with the chances of an eruption seen as pretty likely last week. But since then, with no eruption forthcoming, doubts have arisen about whether there will be one after all. The Civil Protection Agency on Monday said we must continue to assume there is a possibility of an eruption. This always has to be taken seriously because it can change very fast. Thorb Jorg Gustdottir, a seismologist at Iceland Geosurvey, told AFP. The latest data indicate the magma is just about a kilometer from the Earth's surface.
Meanwhile, the San Cristobal volcano, the highest in Nicaragua and one of its most active, spewed a cloud of ash on Tuesday that blanketed the city of Chinandega and surrounding communities, according to a local journalist there from AFP. The surprise eruption ejected a column of smoke and ash that was dumped as far as 17 kilometers from the volcano's foot, Nicaragua journalist Carol Altamirano said. The INITER Territorial Studies Institute predicted less intense action in the coming days and no threats to residents. The massive ash deposit lasted about 30 minutes, and deep rumbling from the volcano alarmed locals. Cars switched on their headlights as everything went dark. The 5,725-foot high San Cristobal is one of 7 active volcanoes in the Central American country, and it's located in the Chinandega region, 132 kilometers northwest of the capital, Managua.
Meanwhile, China's rubber stamp parliament voted Thursday for sweeping changes to Hong Kong's electoral system, including powers to veto candidates as Beijing moves to ensure only patriots run the city following huge pro-democracy rallies. Watch this.
已作出关于完善香港特别行政区选举制度的决定，全体代表高度赞同。 表达了包括香港同胞在内的全国各族人民维护国家主权、安全、发展利益、维护香港宪制秩序的坚定决心。现在进行。
On Thursday, only one member of the 2,896-strong National People's Congress abstained in the vote, which critics say will hammer another nail in the coffin of Hong Kong's democracy movement. The decision aims to place responsibility for running the city in the hands of patriots governing Hong Kong, Chinese Premier Li Keqiang told reporters after the vote. Senior Chinese officials have made clear loyalty to the Communist Party will be key to deciding if a Hong Konger is a patriot.
In other news, a U.S. warship sailed through the Taiwan Strait, the American Navy said today, a day after a top U.S. commander warned of the threat to Taiwan of a Chinese invasion within the next 6 years. Now, the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS John Finn, conducted a routine transit yesterday through the waterway separating the Chinese mainland and Taiwan, the U.S. 7th Fleet said. The third such voyage since President Joe Biden took office demonstrates the U.S. commitment to a free and open Indo-Pacific, it said in a statement. The latest transit came the same day Beijing accused Admiral Philip Davidson, the top U.S. military officer in Asia-Pacific, of attempting to hype up China's military threat. At a Senate committee hearing a day earlier, Davidson warned the U.S. was losing its military edge to China in the Pacific and gave a stark assessment that he believed an invasion of Taiwan by Beijing could be imminent. And Eagle News will be right back. Stay tuned.
This portion is brought to you by Canriv Corporation, your ventilation and air conditioning specialist. Services offered: supply and installation of elevators, escalators, air conditioners, ventilators, jet towel, hand dryers, generators, access control system, factory automation, and modernization. For more info, please contact Ami Kanke at 0915-263-7198 or 0998-900-3224.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Meg Integra 3000 Plus mixed pellets and grains. Gawa sa tamang timpla ng expertly formulated pellets at grains para sa magandang pangangatawan at tamang timbang ng inyong mga manok. Meg Integra 3000 Plus. Iba ang laking Integra.
Welcome back to the news. None of the emerging SARS-CoV-2 variant is dominant in the Philippines yet, an official of the Philippine Genome Center said today. Let's listen in.
Ang mga variants of concern ay hindi pa po dominant sa bansa. Hindi pa po dominant. From more than 3,000 sequences na ginawa na po natin na parte ng ating genomic surveillance efforts sa bansa simula po unang linggo ng January, ang most frequently observed lineage, hindi po variant, lineage is the B.1.63 or the Hong Kong lineage po, which comprises about 24% pan. Kailangan pa po nating mas pag-aralan ang mga bagay na ito at makapag-sequence pa po ng virus sa mga samples na galing sa mga lugar na may spike or clustering of cases sa iba't ibang parte po ng bansa. Wala pa po tayong P.1 variant na tinatawag din pong Brazil P.1 variant wala pa po sa bansa. Ang Brazil lineage po ang meron tayo. Magkaiba po ang lineage sa variant. Ang lineage ay subtype po ng SARS-CoV-2 virus na galing sa isang common ancestor or ninuno. Para po itong isang angkan o isang pamilya. Ang mga lineage ay iba't iba pong pamilya or iba't ibang angkan. Hindi po lahat ng mutation ay nakakasama. Ngunit meron pong mutation na nakakasama. So, ang virus po, ganyan po ang kanilang pamumuhay. Habang dumadami sila, pwede sila magkaroon ng mga mutation or kung tawagin po natin ay typo errors. Kasi kinokopya po niya ang sarili niya eh. Sa pagkopyang yon, pwedeng pong magka-typo error. Kaya ito po ay upang sila ay mag-survive at maging mas malakas. So habang lumalaki po ang bilang ng mga kaso ng COVID in different parts of the world, nabibigyan po ng pagkakataon ang virus na magbago. Ang bawat taong mahahawahan ay pagkakataon para sa SARS-CoV-2 virus na muling likhain ang kanyang sarili. So naniniwala po ang mga scientists na ang virus ay nagiging mahusay sa pagiging isang virus, kaya po kailangan we need to keep our cases low or down.
Recent data shows a significant increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, particularly in the National Capital Region. As of March 10, the Department of Health has recorded 2,886 new cases, higher than the previous day's 2,668 new infections.
Meanwhile, Danish health authorities said they were temporarily suspending the use of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine after some patients developed blood clots since receiving the jab. The move comes following reports of serious cases of blood clots among people vaccinated with AstraZeneca, according to the Danish health authority in a statement. But it cautiously added that it has not been determined at the time being that there is a link between the vaccine and the blood clots. Austria announced on Monday that it had suspended the use of a batch of AstraZeneca vaccines after a 49-year-old nurse died of severe blood coagulation problems days after receiving an anti-COVID shot. Now, 4 other European countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and Luxembourg, have also suspended the use of vaccines from this batch, which was sent to 17 European countries and consisting of 1 million jabs. Denmark has, however, suspended the use of all its AstraZeneca supply. On Wednesday, Europe's medicines watchdog, EMA, said a preliminary probe showed that the batch of AstraZeneca vaccines used in Austria was likely not to blame for the nurse's death. As of March 9, the EMA said 22 cases of blood clots had been reported among more than 3 million people vaccinated in the European Economic Area. It is important to point out that we have not terminated the use of AstraZeneca vaccine. We are just pausing its use, according to Danish Health Authority Director Søren Brostrøm in a statement. Denmark said 1 person had died after receiving the vaccine, and the EMA has launched an investigation into that death.
The European Union will prolong the use of its oversight mechanism on coronavirus vaccine exports for another 2 months, says Miriam Garcia Ferrer, the bloc's trade spokesperson. Watch this.
The Commission has today extended until the end of June the transparency and authorization mechanisms for exports of vaccine for COVID-19. This export authorization mechanism continues to apply only to export from companies with whom the European Union has an advanced purchase agreement. These advanced purchase agreements commit the vaccine producers to deliver to EU member states a pre-agreed number of vaccines. Those countries most in need in our neighbourhood will continue to be exempted from the application of this instrument.
The measure, which will now continue until the end of June, manufacturers which have signed advance purchase agreements with the European Commission must declare if they intend to export doses outside the bloc. This was brought in after British-Swedish drugs giant AstraZeneca failed to meet promised delivery schedules to EU members while honoring its British contract.
In other news, British television host Piers Morgan has left his role presenting ITV breakfast show Good Morning Britain shortly after sparking 41,000 complaints and storming off the set in a row over Meghan Markle. Morgan has been a vocal critic of Markle ever since she cut off contact with him after she met Prince Harry, and he launched a scathing attack on her following the couple's interview with Oprah Winfrey. Let's take a look.
Would have thought they think that they've cancelled me. I think they'll be rather disappointed when I re-emerge.
So a re-emergement?
I would call it a temporary hibernation, but of course my opinions remain my opinions. They can't silence that. No, I believe in freedom of speech. I believe in the right to be allowed to have an opinion. If people want to believe Meghan Markle, that's entirely their right. I don't believe almost anything that comes out of her mouth, and I think the damage she's done to the British monarchy and to the Queen at a time when Prince Philip is lying in hospital is enormous and frankly contemptible. So that was all very amicable. I had a good chat with ITV, and we agreed to disagree.
Meghan Markle filed a formal complaint with British broadcaster ITV after a presenter criticized her claims against the royal family and later quit. It was reported on Wednesday. Now, Piers Morgan left his role as host of Good Morning Britain on Tuesday following the scathing attack on the Duchess of Sussex interview with U.S. chat show host Oprah Winfrey. Britain's Domestic Press Association news agency said it understood that Meghan formally complained to ITV before he resigned, confirming a report in the Daily Telegraph newspaper. The complaint focused on how his remarks may affect those trying to deal with their own mental health problems, it added. It did not concern his repeated criticism of her or allegations of racism, which have rocked the monarchy. Morgan has been a consistent critic of Markle after she cut off contact with him and after she met Harry and they married in 2018. On Tuesday, Morgan stormed off the set of Good Morning Britain as he clashed with a fellow presenter who defended the Duchess.
In a related news, Prince William tells reporters we're very much not a racist family during a visit to a multiracial school in a deprived area of East London after his younger brother Harry and wife Meghan accused them of racism in a bombshell interview watched around the world. Watch this.
Yes.
Good morning. I don't interrupt you too much.
It's okay.
It's your turn.
It is. I'm staying with you.
So take your mind.
Okay.
You don't even feel it.
I'm not feeling it. My husband is packing, so now I have mine. And I just have 2 children that he loves. Yes, he is. I learned so much.
The Duke of Cambridge, son of heir to the throne, Prince Charles, added that he had yet to speak to Harry in California since the interview first aired in the United States on Sunday.
Brazil's former leader Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva made his return to politics on Wednesday, attacking President Jair Bolsonaro and his imbecile, quote, COVID-19 policies, but declined to say whether he would run against him next year. Lula, who led Brazil from 2003 to 2010, has emerged as a top contender to unseat the far-right incumbent after a judge annulled the popular but tarnished leftist corruption convictions Monday, reinstating his right to run for office. Take a look.
Esse país não tem governo. Esse país não cuida da economia. Esse país não cuida do emprego. Esse país não cuida do salário. Esse país não cuida da saúde. Esse país não cuida do meio ambiente. Esse país não cuida da educação. Esse país não cuida do jovem. Esse país não cuida da meninada na periferia. Ou seja, do que eles cuidam?
He was especially biting on Bolsonaro's handling of the pandemic, which has killed nearly 270,000 people in Brazil, the second highest death toll worldwide after the U.S. Bolsonaro, 65, has repeatedly downplayed the new coronavirus, flouted expert advice on containing it, and made anti-vaccine comments. Bolsonaro fired back that his government did its part. Lula remains a highly controversial figure after being sentenced to a total of 26 years in jail on charges of taking bribes. The allegations stem from Operation Car Wash, an investigation into a corruption scheme in which top politicians and business executives systematically siphoned billions of dollars from state oil company Petrobras.
Here in the Philippines now, where Defense Secretary Delphine Lorenzana asked adversaries and human rights advocates to wait for the results of the investigation on the killing of 9 activists in the Philippines and arrest of 6 others in Calabarzon police operations before making condemnations. The UN Rights Office said 8 men and 1 woman were killed as the authorities executed search warrants before dawn on Sunday. The United Nations said it was, quote, appalled by the apparent arbitrary killing of 9 activists by security forces targeting alleged communist insurgents. Watch this.
Siguro, hintayin muna natin yung investigasyon dito sa atin bago natin isumplong. So, ang ginagawa nito sa kabila, ang patingin ko, ng kalaban natin, ay they are trying to preempt the investigation and paint us to be in the wrong or na nagkamali tayo. So hintayin muna natin na let us settle down and wait for the result of the investigation. And naniniwala naman ako kung sino yung mga nagkamali dyan ay mapaparusahan, either they are PNP or they are armed forces.
The killings happened in simultaneous police and military operations in the Batangas, Cavite, Laguna, and Rizal provinces surrounding Manila.
In other news, Russia said Thursday it had killed a suspected militant planning a terror attack in the North Caucasus Republic of Dagestan. The National Anti-Terrorism Committee, or NAK, in a statement announced that an operation to prevent the preparation of a terrorist attack was carried out today. A bandit who put up armed resistance was neutralized, it said, adding that arms, ammunition, and a suicide belt were discovered on the scene. NAK said no civilians or law enforcement were injured during the operation. The announcement comes less than a month after Russia said its security forces swept up 19 suspected Islamists during coordinated raids across the North Caucasus and annexed Crimea. In the 1990s, Moscow fought 2 brutal wars against separatists in Chechnya, a North Caucasus region across the border from Dagestan. Attacks on police have decreased in recent years in the North Caucasus, but Moscow remains in conflict with militants from across the region.
A bus carrying dozens of pilgrims plunged down a steep ravine on Indonesia's Java Island, killing at least 27 people, including junior high school students, authorities said today. Rescuers worked through the night using cranes to pluck injured survivors from the wreckage after the fatal crash late Wednesday in West Java's Sumedang district. The bus carrying 66 passengers was traveling on a winding, poorly lit road when it plunged down the 20-meter ravine, according to authorities. The driver and teenage passengers were among the dead, while 39 survived the accident. The fatalities are a mix of children and adults, Bandung Rescue Agency official Mamang Fatmono told AFP. Authorities said they were probing the accident's cause. The bus was returning to the town of Subang from a religious pilgrimage site in West Java. We have more updates for you. Please don't go away.
This portion is brought to you by Kubert, an expert in air conditioning and electromechanical, also engaged in structural, electrical, fire protection, plumbing, and sanitary services. Kubert, your ultimate MAPS air conditioning solutions.
Alamat, handa. Bigla ka na lumumalis, hindi ka na paalam. Girl, sanay noon pa lang agad mo nang inamin. Madali lang naman akong kausapin. Wala akong pake, hindi ka kawalan sa akin.
Sakita na yun, si Mo.
Yakoy dyan.
Ako si Kian, ini si Tomas.
Ako yung RG.
Si Valfer.
Si Gami.
Ako si Alas at Gumi.
Alamat!
Abangan niyo po kami bilang guest performers sa Letters and Music.
Ngayong darating na Sabado, March 13, 1 to 2 p.m.
Siyempre, dito lang sa Net 25.
See you! Bigla ka na lang umalis, hindi ka na paalam. Siguro ang pag-ibig mo sa akin ay pansamantala.
Welcome back. U.S. President Joe Biden hailed the passage of the American Rescue Plan by Congress as a historic victory for the American people. The $1.9 trillion plan, months in the making, is one of the largest U.S. rescue packages ever and will impact every aspect of the country's economy for years to come. Take a look.
I want to thank Speaker Pelosi and the House of Representatives today for passing the bill, and I will be signing into law shortly. This bill represents a historic victory for the American people.
This is indeed a special and good afternoon. This is a momentous day in the history of our country because we have passed historic, consequential, and transformative legislation.
You will receive $1,400 checks by the end of March. Help is on the way. Vaccines will be available far more quickly to far more people in a shorter time. Help is on the way. Our schools will open safely and more quickly than we thought. Help is on the way. Half of America's children who are in poverty will not be in poverty because of this bill. Help is on the way.
The measure only narrowly passed the House of Representatives by a 220-211 vote with zero support from Republicans, who accused Biden of abandoning his Inauguration Day pledge to unify a divided nation. But as Republicans stood in opposition, progressive and moderate Democrats locked arms and marched the measure across the finish line days before the critical unemployment benefits were set to expire. The bill, which cleared the Senate last weekend, now heads to the White House, where President Biden, who made the American Rescue Plan his top legislative priority, said he plans to sign the measure into law on Friday.
Also today, Texas officially ended its face mask mandate and it lifted limits on restaurants and other businesses. Take a look.
I think it was a political decision. I think because the governor really messed up when it came to the energy, and so it was a political ploy. So he's very right-wing Republican. A lot of Republicans here in Texas don't believe in masks, don't believe in the science behind masks. So he purely, in my opinion, did it just to gain some support, and it worked. But I don't think he had the health of the people in mind.
I think it's good. I think it's good for everyone to be able to make their own choice and what to choose for their body. I just think that's the best choice for everybody.
Competitors at this year's Tokyo Olympics and the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics will be offered coronavirus vaccines bought from China, according to Olympic Chief Thomas Bach announced today. Now, Bach said the Chinese Olympic Committee, in cooperation with the IOC, was ready to make vaccine doses available in two ways. This can be via international partners or in countries where partnerships are already in place with the Chinese government, he said. Now, Bach added that a significant number of Olympic teams have already been vaccinated. Another significant number have received a commitment from their governments or are in very positive discussions. Now, the Tokyo Games were originally scheduled for the summer of 2020, but it was pushed back by 1 year as the coronavirus pandemic raged across the globe. They are now scheduled for July 23 to August 8, back at pains to reiterate that the IOC remains committed to holding a successful and safe games this year, dismissing cancellation talk as speculation. Overseas spectators, however, are likely to be shut out as Japanese organizers prioritize public health and safety.
Roger Federer says he was really explosive after winning his first match in over a year as he returns from injury, beating Britain's Dan Evans at the Qatar Open. Watch this.
I was really explosive, actually, even though, of course, I was going in swings of being tired again and then feeling better again. And but overall, I must say I'm really pleased. It was a good performance against a great player, and felt great to be back on a match court. I was very happy with how I was able to handle the tough moments. I didn't feel like, you know, my game started to wobble the more important the points got. I think I was able to play how I wanted to play. So I think that's always a great sign and a great feeling to have.
Eagle News, we'll be right back. Please don't go away.
To prevent the health risks from face-to-face and over-the-counter financial transactions, Filipinos are shifting to digital payments. This is aligned with the roadmap of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to convert at least 50% of the total transactions to digital channels and increase to 70% the number of Filipino adults who are paying or transacting in the formal financial system. In this episode, we will talk about accelerating financial inclusion and innovation.
Being able to leverage technology that already exists and can be customized to your needs is probably one of the biggest steps I can give these financial institutions, not just small ones, but the big traditional banks.
Aradhna Sharma, Regional Sales Director of Advanced AI, will also talk about digital transformation among banks and financial services players in this week's episode of Open for Business.
Pang-batang laro lang yan. Ayaw namin ng kuya kampunan.
Baguhin mo nga yung ugali mo sa kalusugan. Hindi maganda yun.
Okay lang maglaro dito sa Plaza Rodolfo, pero ang magkalat, bawal! Ikaw ba lahat kumain yan? Ikaw ba kalat yan lahat?
Hindi tama yung ginagawa mo, Bebeng, ha?
Sana, lahat na lang ng mga tao dito sa Barangay Aguila maging batang tulad ko.
Hi, Bebeng!
What?
Sumayaw tayong lahat.
Saya-saya.
I'ma ride long as I am alive, whoa.
Word up, no rap, no crap, your boy.
Bakit para tayong nasa monthly finals na pa-semis na? Ba't ganon? Grabe.
Lahat ng ginawa ninyo parang hindi kayo nagko-compete. Kung sino man nanalo ngayon, good luck talaga.
Samahan niyo po kami as we once again make Cindy the dance floor on fire. Dito lamang po yan sa Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 Dance Edition.
All right, welcome back. Prince William has hit back, telling reporters we're very much not a racist family during a visit to multiracial school in a deprived area of East London after his younger brother Harry and wife Meghan accused them of racism in a bombshell interview watched around the world. Take a look.
Sir, have you spoken to your brother since the interview?
No, I haven't spoken yet, but I will do.
And can you just let me know, is the royal family a racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family. No, we're very much not a racist family.
The Duke of Cambridge, son of heir to the throne, Prince Charles, added that he had yet to speak to Harry in California since the interview first aired in the U.S.
A racist family, sir?
No, we're very much not a racist family.
On a small island surrounded by hundreds of wooden huts on stilts in the middle of Lake Nuke in southeast Benin, a giant painting is taking shape. Take a look. For the past 3 hours in 41 degrees Celsius or 106 Fahrenheit heat, French artist Taipei has been busy transforming a playground in the floating village of Gamvi. Shapes gradually appear on the grass in gray and black paint from the nozzle of his sprayer. Fishermen, women selling fish, and children from the village are gathered around him, observing the scene with wonder as a drone hovers above their heads. The 33-year-old says he has seen paintings before in a local gallery, but painting on the grass, that's a first. For Saipe, whose real name is Guillaume Legros, this painting is part of the largest human chain in the world.
Amazing.
Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. We have a lot of great artists that, we all want to see their works more.
Of course, yes.
That's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. Please join us again tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and
we live
in interesting times.
Factual.
We have to defeat the virus everywhere.
Timely information. Balanced. Not only in the country, but also abroad.
I'm certain of one thing.
Interviews that people need to know.